Thank you.
Aha. How much one forgets in 3 months, right? I'd like to welcome you to the Parks and Recreation Open Space Commission meeting tonight. If you have a cell phone, we ask that you turn it off, please. And then we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, and I ask Jess to lead us in that, please.
Okay, you got it.
One nation, indivisible, liberty, justice for all.
A roll call, please.
Commissioner Cullinan. Here. Vice Chair Lennon. Here. Youth Member Mellinger.
Here.
Arborist Meserve.
I'm here.
Commissioner Mizuraka.
Here.
Commissioner Tolbert.
Here.
And Chair Donnelly.
Here. The next item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Are there any comments or suggestions? I just have one question that came up. I see that the County Citizens Oversight Committee for Measure M is September 26th, and I'm still a bit in the fog as to, I know Leslie Graves is a District 1 person on that commission, but what information do we provide at that meeting, and could we get a copy of it between now and the 26th?
I don't know if this is the right time to do it. I might do it under staff comment, but just briefly, this particular meeting, we're not presenting any information except for our maintenance of effort, which is an annual report that we have to give that shows that we're not using Measure M Parks money to do operational expenses, so that we have an operational budget as well.
That's the report
Yeah,
going
I have to
okay.
do that report
Okay.
by next Wednesday,
Okay.
and that'll be what that meeting is about.
Okay.
And you're welcome to send that to everybody as well. I'd like to see it.
Thank you. Anybody else have a suggestion or revision of the agenda? Then I guess we need a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to do that to you. Commissioner Cullinan. Vice Chair Lennon.
Aye.
Commissioner Mizuraka.
Aye.
Commissioner Tolbert.
Aye.
Chair Donnelly.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Now we can go to the public comments, and I have a statement to read here. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. It is recommended that you keep your commands to 3 minutes or less. Your comments, sorry. I just had a flu shot an hour ago, so maybe that's it. Under state law, unless otherwise permitted under the Ralph Brown Act, the merits of the matter presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the commission at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time the item comes up for the commission's consideration. Upon being acknowledged by me, the chair, please step to the podium and speak into the microphone. Begin by starting and spelling your name. Members of the public present in the chambers will be called first, and then those that are attending on Zoom. Are there any public comments?
Excuse me, Chair Donnelly, prior to this presenter for public comment starting, or just regular citizen, there was a request made. This is the chair of this CAC. And there was a request made whether he could go over the 3 minutes, the standard 3 minutes of a standard public comment time limit. And I'd just like to present that to you and recommend that we allow that tonight, but that would be your choice. And the commissions.
I certainly would accept that as a chair of our partner commission. But is there anybody else that would want to?
Yeah, second.
Okay. So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're here, is David Morell, 483 Mall Court here in the city of Sonoma, Morell, if I have to spell it, 1 R, not 2 L, not 2 R's. I'm here as the chair of the Climate Action Commission. We're tag teaming with our Community Development Director, Jennifer Gates, who's going to be joining me in this presentation. The idea this evening is to give you some information about where we are as a Climate Action Commission in the spirit of working closely together with the PROS Pros Commission as a joint effort to move us forward as a city. So basically, we are another one of the commissions. We are a Climate Action Commission of 5 commissioners responsible for developing a climate action plan, bringing that plan to the public for public input, taking that public input along with the plan and eventually bringing it forward to the city council for council approval. Once that has occurred, we want to stress the word action in the climate action plan. So I'd like to spend a couple of minutes this evening sharing with you an overview of our approach and the work we've done to date, with a special focus on those areas of climate action that seem to us to be most germane to the Pros Commission. So that the idea is that we work together jointly and effectively on behalf of our city. Our climate action plan, the target, very important, passed by the City Council, is net zero greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2030. This is less than 7 years away. Net zero means net zero. We have a long way to go based on the data available in a number of areas in order to get us to net zero as our target. We've broken our effort at the moment in our draft plan. Everything is open for revision as we move forward through the public involvement process. At the moment, we have 6 key action areas. Transportation, the bulk of our greenhouse gas emissions here in the city, not surprisingly, come from automobiles, trucks, buses, other transportation. So we start with that. Buildings, we have a lot of opportunities to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions from our buildings here in the city, and we'll get back to that a little later in terms of some specifics. Solid waste, there's a major state effort, SB 1383, on solid waste management designed to reduce methane emissions, which are a critical climate component, and we're making significant progress in that regard, and the Climate Action Plan has further effort on the solid waste area. Water, the delivery of water, even here where we're not major users of groundwater, we are primarily users of water out of the Russian River from Sonoma Water. Water still is an important piece of greenhouse gas emission usage, and we'll be presenting some ideas on water conservation designed specifically to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Government operations, this building, City Hall, the A Street East complex, and so on. We have some comments later in this presentation about what to do with government operations that can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It's not a huge portion of our total package, but this is an area, climate management, where every increment matters. The small increments and the large ones, they all matter and not to be ignored. And finally, carbon sequestration, placing significant amounts of elemental carbon in the ground or in trees, much of interest to this group this evening, as a way to sequester carbon for days, for decades, for eons, potentially, as a way to get to net zero, since we will not, obviously, get to zero. We will have cars, we will have water, we will have activities underway that generate greenhouse gas emissions. So how do we balance that? That's where carbon sequestration, a fancy word, basically stuffing it in the ground where it doesn't get out into the atmosphere. So some key recommendations of the Climate Action Commission. Again, these are draft, subject to alteration, but they are what they are at this point. Important to share with you. Carbon sequestration has a major focus on planting new trees in Sonoma. Large trees, small trees, effective trees in order to capture carbon as they grow, as they go through their photosynthetic process. So a very important part of where we look forward to working with you as a commission is the planting of new trees in the city. Related to that, but we like to keep it separate as a separate action item, carbon sequestration through building several green pocket forests in city parks. What's a green pocket forest? It's a dense structure of varied native trees and shrubs designed specifically to grow quickly and thereby capture significant amounts of greenhouse gas in a fairly short period of time, within the time frame we're looking at of the 7-year time frame. They're sometimes called Miyawaki forests, which does not mean that we're using Japanese plants. We're using California native plants, but the initial concept came out of a professor, Miyawaki, out of Japan. There's been extensive effort on this. There's been some very interesting new reporting in the New York Times, for example, on green pocket forests in the United States. That's worth looking at, and we can arrange for all of you to get copies of that. I know Chair Donnelly has it already because I sent it to John. So that's a very interesting article, and we do also have a local expert in this process based nearby in Berkeley who can advise us on how to build an effective green pocket forest. We've identified the possibility, it's not a certainty, but a possibility, of J.E. Carter Park near Friar Creek on the west side as a possible first place for a green pocket forest. We've examined it. We've had some interaction with key staff members who are here this evening regarding this possibility of a location for an initial green pocket forest. We're intrigued with other possibilities at Sonoma Garden Park on A Street East, Nathanson Creek Preserve on 2nd Street East, and other locations for green pocket forest. Let's start with one, make sure we know how the heck to do it, and then begin to look at others that rapidly move to capture greenhouse gases. Second, on carbon sequestration, in local parks and open spaces, we're interested in the possibility of placing elemental carbon in the ground where it helps the soil. It's typically combined with compost, and there's been some discussion within the Climate Action Commission about exactly how to do this with the elemental carbon, but it offers us some interesting opportunities. We're intrigued with possibilities for the Sonoma Overlook Trail area, for next door Montini Preserve, and again Sonoma Garden Park. These are areas for consideration for effective carbon sequestration. One other area of our activity at the Climate Action Commission that I think will be of great interest to this group involves rainwater capture systems. Significant systems to capture rainwater and use it to replace water for irrigation and related purposes. And from the analysis we've done so far, we think this is possible at buildings like this one, but especially important to look at the Corporation Yard on A Street East as an opportunity for the use of that non-potable water in some effective ways. There is a model system already built and operating successfully, not in the city, but nearby at a place called Flowery School in the Springs that we urge you to go visit and take a look at. It's an effective operational system for rainwater capture and use to replace potable water at Flowery, and we'd like to do some more of that in the city. So just to wrap up, those are the critical areas. We have a number of other action items I'm happy to share with you either in questions tonight or with documentation. But some broader thoughts as I conclude, and thanks for letting me I used to get paid in 50-minute segments, as did John. So I'm going to conclude well under the 50-minute lecture level. The Climate Action Commission is committed to exercising leadership and vision to reach our net zero goal. None of this is easy. There is controversy, and every small step leads to more steps. People observe. People see action. So leadership and vision, we're a small city, but we're meaningful. So let's do what we can, do it well, do it aggressively, and exercise leadership as we move forward. One of the most challenging aspects of the whole global process, global change, climate change, is the sense that it's so big we can't do anything. And it's not worth it, we can't stop it. Flooding in Libya with 10,000 dead, kind of numbers like that, it's overwhelming to the point maybe of paralysis. We can't let that happen. We need small steps, medium-sized steps, occasionally a big step, and keep stepping forward and doing this. Second, all of this, we're all of us in this together. This is not an issue of us versus them, him versus her, small versus large, old versus young. It's each action matters, no matter how small, as we build a process that's effective overall. A couple of broader ideas just to kind of get you thinking about them, all of us. We have a Sonoma Clean Power System in this county, which is a very interesting innovation, very effective system. About data we have now, about 89–90% of our meters, both residential and non-residential within the city limits, are in the Sonoma Clean Power System. The remaining smaller, much smaller number is in the PG&E system. Of the ones in the Sonoma Clean Power System, nearly all are in the basic system, which is wonderful. It's fairly clean energy, electricity, as this pun. There is an evergreen system that's slightly more expensive, and it would much reduce remaining greenhouse gases from our buildings, residential buildings. What kind of incentives could we find? It's a little more expensive. Our best guesses are, depending on how much electricity you use, it's in the $12 to $15 a month for nearly most electricity users. It's a piece of change, but it's not overwhelming. What kind of incentives could we build to move people to this fully renewable evergreen system and really reduce aggressively as we get down this 7-year time frame? Something to think about. Another aggressive and kind of wild idea, but a very important idea we're beginning to talk about. What does it mean for Sonoma to be a climate-smart tourist destination? How do we build our climate and environmental actions jointly with our business community, with our winery community, with our tourist-based funding systems? How do we pull this together? And what can we learn by interacting with other communities facing similar challenges, like Aspen, like Tahoe, like beach communities? There's a lot of interest in thinking through in a way to bring the economic community, the business community, and the environmental and climate communities together rather than opposed to one another. So with that, let me turn over to my colleague, Jennifer Gates. Jennifer.
Thank you.
I'll be very brief. So I know we went way over those 3 minutes. So again, I'm Jennifer Gates. I'm the Community Development Director. So it's nice to meet you all. I haven't met many of you yet. So come on by City Hall. I'd be happy to meet you. So the process moving forward was highlighted by our chair, Morel. And it is kind of a multi-step process. We're now going to start the public comment period. Since your meeting was earlier than our release of the document, we wanted to get before you to just let you know that this document is coming out probably by the end of this week or early next week. It'll be released to the public for public comment, and we will be holding a public meeting probably the end of September or early October on all the strategies that are going to be presented as part of this climate action strategy. When we release that, we'll provide all the documents for your review so that you can look at it, provide public comments as individuals. Then we would going to go back with that draft to our Climate Action Commission for their review and approval. And then they would be making that recommendation to City Council. So we're looking to have that meeting in November. If it doesn't make the November, we may just kind of shift a little bit more or hold a special meeting. Since, like you all, they only meet quarterly. So we would be looking to go to City Council, though, early next year. If they approve that document, go back to Climate Action Commission, prioritize, make a funding request that we will then present to City Council for next year's general fund request process. So again, how to comment on the proposed climate action will be presented in an e-blast. We'll make sure that all the commissioners from all commissions receive that information so they could share that information with their other friends, family, and other interest groups. So with that, I will conclude. It is public comment, so it's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate the progress report and look forward to working with the Climate Action Commission. Are there any other public comments here in this room or from Zoom?
There's a hand raised on Zoom. Go ahead, Tom.
Good evening, Chair Donnelly, Commissioners, members of the public, and staff. This is Tom Conlon, living just outside the city limits. Speaking tonight as an individual, but by way of background, I am a commissioner serving on the Climate Action Commission. And I just wanted to thank and amplify the comments of our chair, Chair Morrell, and city staff. We're looking forward to working with your commission in the implementation of our recommendations and the council's direction as described to be forthcoming. I did want to make one brief comment on the matter of carbon sequestration. We know that our priority needs to be greenhouse gas reduction. Carbon sequestration is a way of dealing with overshoot, the way that we know we've already polluted our climate so severely that we're going to need to draw down the carbon dioxide that's been put up there already and is continuing to go up every day. It's especially important in my mind is that we look at protection of our existing carbon stock resources. It's wonderful to plant new trees, but trees are really small. Little new trees are really small. And I know in the city of Sonoma, we've had a lot of trees removed in the last several years. If you think about the trees along the Crosstown Bike Path at First Street West near Depot Park, if you think along the bike path along Friar Creek, several large redwood trees were removed. Think of how many small seedlings would need to be replanted and grow out to equal the biomass of just the trees I've mentioned, let alone all of the vegetation treatment that goes on around the city. So until we have a good carbon stock analysis, I think it's important to remember protecting our existing trees is important too. And I just urge the Pros Commission to keep that front of mind as you make your decisions about city activities. Thank you for your consideration of my comments tonight.
Thank you, Tom. Are there any other public comments?
No.
Okay. Look at the consent calendar, which is to approve the minutes of the June 14th Pros meeting. Is there any discussion before we second and move on this? I just had one question, and that was the skate park at the Valley of the Moon skate park in the Maxwell Village. It was on that agenda, and it was pushed forward to a subsequent meeting as an information item. Do we need, not that we want to discuss it tonight, but is that still pending?
Yes, I'd still like him to come and present about his
Okay.
project, but he wasn't available tonight.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to accept the June 14th minutes?
I move to accept, accept the June 14th minutes.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Cullinan,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lennon,
Yes.
Commissioner Mizuraka,
Aye.
Commissioner Tolbert,
Yes.
Chair Donnelly.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
We're now ready to proceed to the regular calendar on our agenda. And the first item is a presentation on the proposed steps to establish the City of Sonoma Parks and Recreation Department. We welcome our new city manager, David Guin. Thank you for coming, and we're looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and it's good to meet you. First off, let me introduce myself. I've met some of you, but not all of you. So I'm David Guin. I've been the city manager here for about 4 months. Enjoying my time. It's been, I'll go over a little bit about what's been going on. But I appreciate the chance to come talk to you all, introduce myself, but also thank you for your service. I know you spend a lot of time on these boards and commissions. All the volunteers that work on boards and commissions throughout the city help us do what we have to do in a city like ours. So thank you for your service. Thank you for the work you're doing. We appreciate all the time you put into it. One of the things that I'm focusing on in my first 90 days here was really to look at the organizational structure of the city, staffing levels, getting the right people in place, hiring people like Jennifer Gates to oversee the Community Development Department, which now oversees building and planning, and look into the future about what we want to be as an organization and how we need to be structured. In addition to that, looking forward to moving forward on council goals. So the council sets goals at the beginning of each year, and it's our job to help carry out those goals, and the boards and commissions all support that as well. So the next goal setting process will be coming up at the end of the year, early next year, and we will notify you of that process. But the council will set those goals, set the vision, and then we will all help carry that out. So looking forward to that process as well. I speak to you today in context of a few things. One, we presented a budget deficit to the city council when we presented the budget about a month ago. We had a $1.1 million deficit looking into this coming year. That was a result of a few things. One, a grant we had for some firefighters went away, and we ended up picking up those costs. Hopefully, that'll come back in the future. In a future tax measure that's going to be on the ballot in March. We also had ARPA funding that we were receiving for the past few years that went away. So that we're making some adjustments in our budget right now to make sure that we can balance that budget. And our goal right now is to bring forward a balanced budget, or a plan for a balanced budget going into next year. In addition to that, we did receive a civil grand jury report on our cemeteries in terms of how our cemeteries are operating, the lack of oversight, the lack of attention and funding and capacity building within our cemeteries. So the city owns and operates 3 cemeteries. That's very unusual for cities to do. Most cemeteries are private or they're districts, but we do own them as a city, and so we have to maintain them. They run as a business. We have to generate revenue and make sure we maintain those and create those as assets that they are for our community. So those are a couple big things that are on the horizon that we're working through. I say that all because what I'm going to say next in context assist with trying to address these issues. As we look at the organization, and as I've been going through all the work that's been done up to date before I got here, one of the big efforts that was underway was the Recreation Task Force report that was put together by Karen Collins, who is here today, and Steve Page, and a group that supported them, in addition to the Catalyst Fund to help fund that project. A lot of work went into that. A lot of effort went into envisioning and looking at comparable cities on what structure should be for a Parks and Rec department for a city our size, and the reasons and rationale for doing that. Having a structure in place in an organization is critical. If you don't have a structure in place to manage how things work and who's in charge and who's responsible, programs will just disappear and they'll get carried on or fall through the cracks. And I think we've seen that over the years, and I'm noticing a few of those things as we go through and find projects that have been dropped or not completed. There really is no place for that to be managed. So just like a public works department, a parks and rec department would be determined and structured in a way that would provide that structure and support and very clear guidelines on what their roles are. And so in recognition of the work that the task force did, we want to make sure we leverage that and we take that information as very valuable information and make sure it doesn't get lost and work on moving that forward. one of the other things that came up in that report was looking at our nonprofits and the recreation programs and making sure people are aware of what we have and what's currently going on in our recreation side. We have an incredible nonprofit community here that provides those services. It's something we need to enhance, support, encourage, potentially even grow, and find gaps where we're missing and fill those gaps in with service providers that can provide those services. So those are things that we'll be looking at as well. So how do we do this? Basically, the concept of creating a Parks and Rec department would be that we would have a Parks and Rec department that would oversee parks, all our park space, open space, our plaza, which is a huge asset that the city has that we need to look at in terms of manage and create a master plan and implement that master plan. Our cemeteries would fall under the Parks and Rec department. The recreation programs and support of those contracts with our partners, the arts programs that we have fall into there, and events. So there's a lot of things right now. Everything I just mentioned, all those items are currently scattered throughout the city in various departments, in the city manager's office, and in public works and planning department, but nobody's in charge and overseeing those and making the connections and helping move those initiatives forward, making sure they're working together. In addition, the Parks and Rec department, the way it'd be envisioned, would support the Pros Commission and everything you do, and also the Arts Commission as well. So there's a lot of different revenue sources to support that. Measure M funding that you've heard quite a bit about comes in for capital. We have income from our cemeteries that comes in once we get that capacity moving forward. We have income from events, but we will need additional income or a steady source of income to maintain a department, a structure, for a couple reasons. One, for staffing. Well, I'll get into kind of what the revenue is needed for, but the steps in moving forward would be, one, determine what that structure looks like so we know what we're looking to build, and then two, determine how we would, what funding we would need to make it work. That would include staffing, funding, additional funding for recreation programs and enhancement, money and funding we would need to enhance the cemeteries to build capacity, and then also funding we would want to put aside for capital improvements for things like the plaza and anything that comes out of a plaza master plan or other things we want to enhance our open space with. So it's we're in the early stages of this. It's important to be evaluating this. The next steps would be to determine what types of revenue sources are out there: sales tax, property tax, other types of revenue initiatives. We have to evaluate that, determine what's feasible, go out to the community, understand what the community wants, make sure that any approach that we take, the community would want to support, make sure there's a value back to the community in doing this. And then if anything does come together, we would probably be looking at November of 2024 to put something on a ballot if that's the direction we want to move forward, if we can craft something that is of interest to the community to make happen. So we're doing all this work right now in the background to just make sure that we are addressing all the issues and the needs and everything that I'm seeing going through the organization, but we will be reaching out to you and other groups to make sure that we get your input in the work that was done on the up to date, make sure that's incorporated in this process as well. So I just want to give that quick update on what we're thinking, where we're going. There's still a ways to go. I will definitely come back to this group as we move forward, as things become more solidified, and we'll find a way to receive clear feedback and input from you as we move through the process as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hi there. I just find there's so much wonderful information and there's so much interest so far from everyone to move ahead with the Parks and Rec Department. The one thing I couldn't seem to find anywhere, including in the Comparable Cities report, is a salary survey or any sense of what one or more staff members would entail. And I feel like we've got all this good intent, but we don't have it massaged down to numbers yet. I know you're working on that. So is there any work being done on what salaries might entail?
Yeah, so the approach would be that we'd look at what levels of management we'd want. Realistically, we'd want a Parks and Rec Department director. Within that, you potentially could have two managers overseeing the parks and cemeteries and physical assets, and then arts, recreation programs, events. Based on those levels, we have a current structure in the city. We have to have some comparability within the city in terms of those structures and levels. So that's a pretty good indicator of what those salaries would be. And then we would also look at comparable cities just to make sure that we're in line. But I would need to look at parity amongst the organization before going too far out of line. So that's how we'll come up with those numbers. Yep.
Is there any comment from the staff before we go back to the commission? Okay. Any other?
I guess, David, what is your expectation of this pros commission in the interim between now and November of 2024 as it relates to our mandate?
Yeah, I'm still working on that to determine. I think what I'll be doing is coming back to you to potentially ask for feedback on structure and oversight of what this department would look like. I do have some work to do before I make that ask. Right now, it's just a heads up that this is being looked at and worked on. I also wanted, another reason for coming here too is to just acknowledge the work that has been done to date. That's one thing I've noticed is I think it's really important for everyone that put work into getting to this point knows that it hasn't been dropped and that we are looking at it, working on it. I also do need to work with the city council. The city council will be the body, obviously, that makes that decision and puts it on the ballot. So what I would need from groups like PROS is to help me build the case to be able to go to council so that council can then decide if that's the right way to move forward. So I'll be coming back to you with a more discreet ask probably within the next few months, I would hope.
Anybody else? I'd also like your thoughts on what the ad hoc committees would be under PROS. In the meantime, I know we have the tree committee that's dealing with applications for removal. We have a joint meeting study session going forward to how we can increase the tree canopy. That's not an ad hoc. But there is in the council goals for the 1 and 5 years that there be an ad hoc plaza master plan come out of this commission and develop an RFP for getting is that something that you're thinking of including at this point?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good example of why we need to take this step. There's a lot of initiatives that have to move forward, like a park and plaza master plan, a lot of goals that the council wants to achieve. I'm, as the person that's going to ultimately be responsible for carrying out those goals and making sure it works, and I set staff up for success, I need to have a structure in place that can support that effort. Because right now, if we start a plaza master plan, to be honest, we'll be pulling people from all over the organization, and it'll be other duties that they're doing on the side of something else. And I really need to have people focus on these type of initiatives. They're really important. And once we start something like a plaza master plan, we're going to need to have everyone on the same page. I need to have the resources in place to carry it off. So that's why I'm putting the effort and resources into this to develop the structure, so I can then come forward and say, let's move forward on these initiatives and have somebody responsible.
Patricia, did you want to offer your comment about mini parks at this point?
Oh, I guess I can. Because I walk my dog all the time, I have a lot of contact with the public. And a lot of people that live near mini parks, full disclosure, they don't know I'm on this commission. So I hear a lot of complaints about the actions, and I that the city ignores them, lets limbs fall, it basically doesn't spend any money on them. Mm-hmm. And so I think that more communication with the community. I wrote to Mike earlier today. Lots of times when you have a mini park, the people around it are actually paying for it on their taxes and they don't know it. So I don't know the answers to all those things.
Yeah, I think you're touching on a capacity issue. I think that we're working through. The Public Works Department is taking on an enormous load right now, and with water infrastructure and parks and cemeteries and everything kind of gets pushed to Public Works to deal with. Mm-hmm. So part of this is to figure out how we balance that resource and actually generate more resource to provide either individuals going out and supporting those parks in terms of maintenance versus a contract to support them. But right now, I haven't provided that support to the departments that they need to be able to address those issues. But those are things that are helpful for us to know, because based on that feedback, that also helps us craft what type of resource and what structure do we need to be able to accomplish the level of service that the community expects. What's ultimately going to come out of this, in most cases, when you start talking about revenue expenses, is there's a level of service that of expectation. And that's going to be the ultimate conversation we have, is what level of service do you want? Do you expect? expect, and there's a cost for that. So I have to figure out what that cost is, and then identify what that revenue is going to be. So I think this is a really good example of that type of conversation that's going to happen.
You know, what's happening out in the community without you, you know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah,
So-
but I think your
Yeah.
role as a member of this, bringing it back, I think is really helpful. I think that's really an important role. So, and I'll go out to the community. I know we'll go out and to try to listen to people, trying to talk to anybody that will want to talk to me. But please send them my way. I'd love to hear, because it does help. Yeah.
Are there any public comments on this? Karen?
Karen Collins, 275 France Street, here in Sonoma. And I just want to commend the city manager for bringing this up. The task force was formed 4 years ago, and so we're just very pleased, all of us, to see that something is happening. And also Public Works, because I know you've been working on the restrooms, and that's been something else that we've, been hoping for some time. The task force, Steve and I were here at your first meeting, I think, a couple of months ago. So I'm not going to go into any background, but I'm speaking for him. He happens to be on a beach in Italy. And he said he just didn't think he could come back for this. But at any rate, the task force was very, I think there were about 18 of us, and it did represent all of the contract partners that provide recreation. It included the schools, it included the hospitals, it included the Rotary, just about any group in town that is interested in parks and recreation and health. And I think that we're all just pleased that there's, first of all, like a commission, that you are all here and appreciate your time working on this, and that now there is a focus for the work that we did. We have turned over the work that we've done to the city manager, and I think you all have copies of the Potrero report, and you're aware of the website and what needs to be done there. So I just am here to say good for you guys. Very pleased about what's happening, and if any of us can be at all helpful as you move forward, I hope you'll call on us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any Zoom public comments?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. Any further? I don't think we need a motion on this, do we? Just to thank you for this information. And I will say that we look forward to working with you as you go forward, and I hope the information flow, we'll know how progress is going and where we can be of help and advice. So
Great.
we're standing by.
Great. Thank you. Thank you again for the time. Appreciate it.
Chair Donnelly, I just want to bring up one thing before we go on to the next item. Just having a quick comment on David's system that he's laying out here and watching it take effect in our new community development department is basically watching Jennifer in her role and creating the structure that he's referring to, and making sure that you have that person and that structure in place to carry out the goals prior to knowing what the goals are and trying to develop the goals. And I'm watching it happen at City Hall, and it's working really well.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge, we have in some ways, the luxury of sitting up here and ideating on all these amazing ideas that have community support. And I think we all, I'll speak for myself. I've certainly recognized over the time on the Pros Commission that we are capacity constrained. You all are capacity constrained by, just the level of staffing, and we talk about maintenance all the time. And so, we can come up with 50 great ideas that have community support, but if we don't have the infrastructure in place to execute them and to maintain them well, whether it's a park or a tree program or a microforest, I think I'm saying that wrong, but so I just want to acknowledge that I think that structure is really important, and it does take time. It's a pause. It's not a backward step. It's a pause to move forward with something that's going to work. Hopefully, we can do that.
Yeah, and Vice Chair Lynn, you couldn't have said it better, because just reminiscing on what was said earlier about CAC and their goals, we're not talking about doing things in the next month or two. We're talking about doing things next year and being prepared for next year's budget. These are the things that were said tonight. And so just making sure that we're keeping our eye on the ball and not trying to rush the process, because it's going to create anxiety. And we don't need that. And let's take our time, just keep our focus, keep our eye on the ball, and do it right.
Okay. I think we can move on to the next agenda item, which is recommendation to initiate a joint study session with key stakeholders, including Parks, Recreation, Open Space Commission, the Climate Action Commission, and the Planning Commission, to discuss the City of Sonoma tree policies and steps to make revisions. So this comes out of some work that we've done, study groups, brainstorming, bringing different people in to see how, as the David Morrell from the Climate Action Commission, we need to increase the carbon sequestration by increasing the urban canopy of the city. We're losing more trees to drought and to homeowners' applications to remove trees than we are able to grow them. So we want to have this joint study session, and we'll very much hope Jennifer will be our guide, and that's why I wanted to move to this since you're here. I will say there was a suggestion we move the Olson Park up to the next part on the agenda so that people who are waiting to make comments for that won't have to sit through the entire rest of our discussion. But we'll come back and see if we can do that. But for now, Jennifer, do you have anything you want to share with us about this?
I think this is more of an informational item that we've put together for you. It's not really something that you're going to need to vote on or anything. It's just to let you know that we are recognizing all the efforts done by all of our commissions around trees. And we need to create more of a tree policy and, again, provide that structure for how we move forward with replacement regulations, clear direction on what trees are critical to keep and at what stage, and work with our knowledgeable, I am not an arborist, but work with arborists and landscape architects on how to do those types of things. So we need the people in the room helping make those policy decisions, or making those policy suggestions, I should say, and then we will move it forward for City Council. After the three of these commissions meet, we'll probably set up a few meetings that we would all meet. They'd be considered special meetings, Brown Act, etc., and have those discussions together as a group. So that's all.
Any further comments from staff?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind making a comment or two. Like Jennifer said, this is a very involved task, and it involves 3 different departments at the city, 3 of the most substantial ones, Public Works, the Jennifer's group, and the city manager's office. And that's 2/3 to 3/4 of the staff. So when you start talking about looking at these ordinances and resolutions and bringing them, making changes to them, making changes to the policy, bringing them all into the 21st century, it's a big task. And we, like here again, we want to keep our focus and, looking at different ways that we could move forward on things. This is something that we can get started scratching into and spending hours on, making it better. Talking with some of the people on the commission and some council members, can we go through and update our planting detail in our City Sonoma standard details? What do we need to improve to make it better? One of the items I'm going to be talking to you about tonight is just some of the high profile trees in town that we have to make some key critical decisions on. And is there a way to take that tree that has a root that's 12 inches diameter underneath the sidewalk, fix the sidewalk and save the tree? Because that's going to take some creative thinking, and it's tree by tree. So a lot of different ways that we can move forward on this and try to keep the number of mature trees that we have in town.
A couple of thoughts I had as I was reading all the material in regards to trees in our town was what's the source of the science how much input on the science in regards to drought-resistant trees? I mean, I know we're going native trees, which makes perfect sense, but what are the most drought-resistant trees? I was thinking about infrastructure, if we add trees. Are the utilities there to support those trees? And after the Climate Action Group's presentation, I was thinking about which trees absorb the most carbon. The other thing I was thinking about this meeting is, well, SEC could be a good resource for this. The other thing is, hopefully it will be a Zoom meeting so that more people can attend. That's it.
Sorry, what's SEC?
Sonoma Ecology Center.
Well, we hear you, and Jennifer, and I know we can't take it all at once, but we need to get started. So I'm looking forward to when you can call us together so we can figure out what parts are the most strategic at this point for us to move forward with. And as David said, you know, the planet's burning up, so we've got to juxtapose that with the work that we need to do to see if we can make a difference right here in Sonoma. So I look forward to seeing if we can work together and at the same time be respectful of your demands on you and the department, the Public Works Department. But I think there's a number, quite a few people that feel that we really need to address this. So standing by. Is it okay? Can we do this? Having approved the agenda, can we change the order so that Trina was telling me that it'd be nice if we could accommodate. There's apparently some public comment coming.
There's only 2 items left, though.
Pardon?
There's only 2 items left, right?
I think you can. You should do it at the beginning when you approve the agenda if you want to rearrange things, but like, I don't see why they can't move it around now, yeah, if you want to. But we just have trees before it, so either way.
Okay.
We only have John.
Okay.
Reserves
Okay.
comments about-
Do you want to proceed as scheduled then? Okay. All right.
You can proceed the opposite way too. If you'd like to rearrange it and move the Olson Park up, that's fine as well.
I think there's a silent majority here that say we should stay with the.
Roger.
Okay. So next item, moving forward, is item 3.3, discuss and consider tree removal requests for trees located in the city of Sonoma which have been requested by adjacent homeowners. And additionally, we're to discuss and consider revised procedures for managing the tree removal program. So do we have a?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Donnelly. And Kathy, can you bring up that presentation that has the trees? So we're going to go through 6 trees. That is Olson Park, if you could grab the other one. Thank you so much. We're going to go through 6 trees that we have on file from applicants both in the public right-of-way and on private property that are hoping or have requested to remove the trees. I want to go through them one by one so that we have clear direction from the committee or commission about if you guys want or to approve the removal of the tree, any discussion and a recommendation if you're going to replace it and with what. So that's my plan. Cass, can you get it into slideshows? So these first 3 were looked at by the ad hoc tree committee that was formed at our last pros commission meeting in June. Where are you? Where do I point, Kath? Never mind, we'll do it this way. All right, the first one is 155 5th Street West. The applicant didn't give me a picture, so it is this pine tree that's kind of in the middle of their yard. I know that the ad hoc looked at this, so at this point I'd be looking for John, our arborist, to give us a recommendation on if the ad hoc thought we should remove it and replace it. And
Okey doke. So I looked at this tree. The rest of the ad hoc committee did as well. It's a tree that is in the middle of 2 other trees, very close. There's a lot of tree in a small area. My primary issue with the tree is that it is infested with bark beetles. So it's not going to be around much longer. So I think on that basis, I would be fine removing it.
So we have a recommendation to remove the tree, so then I would hope that the item is discussed by the commission, and if there's a recommendation to replace it with.
Do you have a replacement recommendation?
Only in size, I'd like to stay with the 24-inch box replacement trees. I don't have a specific species, and I'm not sure how we move forward with that.
Unless I'm looking at the wrong item, it says there does not appear to be room for a replacement tree.
There's no room
where this one's coming out.
Oh,
But I'd
so.
like to replace it on the.
I see, I
On
see.
the property someplace.
Okay.
Does not need to be and shouldn't be in the same spot.
Okay.
Do we need a motion on this, tree by tree? Yes.
I think we can do the motion at the end if that
Okay.
works.
So I'll move we accept the Arborist Tree Committee's report to remove the pine tree at 155 Fifth Street West to be replaced with, what did you say, 24-inch box tree?
Yes.
In the property somewhere.
Second. I mean, we probably should go tree by tree in case we disagree on one, right?
Sounds good, let's do that.
Yeah.
All right, our second tree, never mind.
Are we gonna do a roll call?
Oh, yeah, go for it, Kat.
Commissioner Cullinan? Vice Chair Lennon?
Yes.
Commissioner Mizuraka?
Aye.
Commissioner Tolbert?
Yes.
Chair Donnelly?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Item number 2.
All right, our second tree is this large tree in the front yard of 239 Clay Street. Mr. Meserve?
So this is an incredible tree. It's really nice in the neighborhood for the house, but it has a root system that is tearing everything up. Sidewalk, driveway, sidewalk to the house. You can see in the photo, the deciduous tree photo, the huge roots on top of the ground. I just don't see that there's any way to work with this tree. I mean, I feel bad for the folks that are being encroached by it. So as much as I hate to take out a beautiful, healthy tree, I don't think there's a way to manage it otherwise. So my recommendation would be to remove it.
A second.
Is that a motion? Is that? Yeah. Yeah.
I motion to accept John's recommendation.
I'm in a second.
Can I include in the motion a recommendation if you're going to replace it with anything and with what?
I will stay with the standard, what I think is the standard recommendation, a 24-inch box tree on the property someplace, hopefully not something this large, so we're not here again in 25 years.
Are we ready for a roll call? Okay. Commissioner Cullinan? Yes. Vice Chair Lennon?
Yes.
Commissioner Mizuraka?
Aye.
Commissioner Tolbert?
Yes.
Chair Donnelly?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
All right, our third tree is at 538 Linda Drive. It's this large, what is it? A cypress, John?
A beautiful western red cedar. It's in great shape. There's a risk analysis that says it's a safe tree. And I am unclear, although I think Patricia might have some insight for us, why they're wanting to take this tree out. I didn't see any significant damage occurring. So at this point, based on what I have to go by, I would say I would prefer to preserve that tree, this tree.
So I get to comment. This tree has a large root almost at the neighbor's driveway. It's also blocking the drainage, and the drain pipe has been crushed from the backyard. So as John said, it doesn't meet the criteria in their application, but I would suggest that they, depending on what they're actually doing, to request removal again if the problems that, the large roots all over their yard and the neighbor's yard are a problem.
I'd just add that in their application for removal, the reasons they stated were for home renovations, and it presented a fire hazard. And I don't think it met either of those criteria. So I'd go with John and preserve this tree.
I went and looked at it too. It is a beautiful western red cedar. I hadn't seen the full application, but if it's a drainage issue in the back, why couldn't that be remedied? And is this large root that's going towards a neighbor, is that something that could be amputated? Yes, mitigated, yes.
I think we have to start looking at those kind of options. Instead of finding reasons to take trees out, we need to find reasons to keep trees. And while this might not be a simple everyday thing, I think there is a way to prune some roots, do some underground exploration for drainage, and do everything we can to keep that tree.
The thought came to me that that's a beautiful shade tree. Would they really want to have a heat island there when that tree comes down? But that's the homeowner's decision. I'll move to accept our arborist, Mr. Meserve's recommendation on item number 3 at 538 Linda Drive, that the Western Red Cedar application be denied.
Second.
Roll call vote. Commissioner Cullinan?
No.
Vice Chair Lennon?
Yes.
Commissioner Mizuraka?
Aye.
Commissioner Tolbert?
Yes.
Chair Donnelly?
Yes.
The motion passes with a vote of 1 to 4.
Now we have the additional item under this agenda, discuss and consider revised procedure for managing the tree removal requests.
Yeah, we're getting to it right here. So those first 3 were looked at by the ad hoc. And in the interim, since we've met, Public Works and the city continues to receive these applications, and having kind of a 6-month turnaround between when people are turning stuff in and when they can realistically receive approval doesn't feel like the best process. So staff is recommending a new process whereby when we receive them, we'll distribute them to the Pros Commission and the arborist. The arborist will go look at the trees. The Pros Commission is welcome to also independently go look at the trees so we can have a productive discussion. And then the arborist will bring his recommendations to each one of our meetings, and we can have these discussions like we're having now. So that's what these next 3 will be in line with.
And just clarify too, because we need an arborist at the city. So the idea is that that's our interim fix right now, an interim proposal, but we would look to actually potentially, we'll bring this to you guys, but modify the pros and have the arborist actually be a city staff, because community development needs an arborist as well, and it's very helpful that's the role. Commission's role is not to go out and help them, but the city staff role is to help the applicant. So the conversations that we were just having, this is a good example of where we would say, all right, here's the application. Can you go follow up with the applicant, talk to them about their concerns based on this application, and then they can then come to that conclusion. They can still further their request to you all, but at least we would have a staff person knowledgeable about trees that could work with the applicant. And that requires a change in the Pros Commission itself.
And can I just clarify, are you suggesting that John Meserve, who's our arborist now, be a staff position, or are you saying there's a staff position in addition to John?
We would have a consultant arborist, and we would look to modify the Pros Commission to not necessarily have an arborist that's non-voting on this commission. So the arborist would be actually a consultant position that would then provide those recommendations as a staff person. Does that make sense?
Sort of.
Basically doing what he's doing right now, except having more of that ability as a staff role to work with the applicants on their proposals.
Oh, okay, that makes perfect sense.
So I love that idea because it doesn't feel right to me to kick back the Western Red Cedar and say, no, you can't, without advising how you can, and that's not our role here. So I like the concept. I think it serves the preserve more trees rather than take them out approach that everybody's talking about.
I concur because the process is very time consuming as it's set up. If we get applications that come in March, we address it at our June meeting, report back in our September meeting, and, that's 5 months have gone by. And I think the homeowners deserve a quick turnaround on their applications.
Couldn't agree more, Commissioner Fulwer. Very well said. Thank you, Jennifer, for getting up and bringing that up, and Oriana for presenting it. This was the crux of what we were trying to do when the city manager, myself, and Jennifer looked at this process and said, this is taking too long. How can we speed it up? And so we will be running some staff recommendations by the commission to get comments and feedback about pass forward, about, because we want to make this process go even faster. And so we'll be keeping the commission in the loop as we move forward on this.
Yeah, I appreciate that part because it's been very educational to me to participate in a couple of inspections. And I've learned a lot, and I think it's valuable knowledge that I appreciate.
Great.
Can I make a comment? Every time I see the tree removal requests in the agenda, I always go and search and look at the street view. Of course, I never know, I can guess which tree it is by the description, but maybe a photo being included in the agenda or more information about the reasons and the
That was my
recommendation.
oversight. Apologies. You should have had the whole reports with the agenda.
Right, okay, great, sounds perfect.
That is required, right? Photograph or a site plan, so anybody can look at the application and find the tree.
Correct. And I have the applications here if in the process of looking at these next ones, you guys would like to review them.
You're going to show them, right?
Just the trees.
John?
If you want to look at the application for any reason.
Does this resolve the potential conflict you indicated earlier that if you're hired by a homeowner to give an opinion for tree removal, that then you would be in a conflict situation? And does this solve that problem?
No, this would still have the same problem. We would have a list of consultants. We would go through a process to select a consultant that would be a primary. If they are conflicted out based on being hired, then we would bring in a secondary consultant to do that review.
Okay. And then that sort of segues into moving forward with the Joint Study Committee on increasing our tree canopy. I've made a number of street tours with Councilman Wellender to look at why the code of the tree planting and developments is so narrow between the curb and the sidewalk that we're continually getting these tree removals. And we want, in that moving forward, want to create incentives for homeowners to plant trees. And Ron's feeling, and I agree that John, I didn't know, has been donating his time all this time. We don't even have a paid person to look at these trees, which indicates that they're not a high priority. And so going forward, as we get into how we're going to promote more tree planting, the idea is that we need somebody with some professional skills to follow up and check where these trees are planted and if they're being properly maintained and nurtured so that they'll grow. So that's just putting that out there. That's something I hope that we'll start looking at. Do you need any further?
Do we have 2 more trees?
Yeah, so we have 3 more trees.
I'm sorry.
With the commission's permission, we'll go through under this new
Okay.
process that John Meserve has looked at. So the first one is 19330 Sonoma Highway. It's this large redwood.
I looked at this tree today. It's highly distressed. It looks much worse today than these pictures. So it's on its way out. So it's another case where if you said, hey, what would you do to try to bring it around? You know, there are things that I might do, but given the condition that it's in, how fast it's declining, I would say we should probably approve its removal.
Motion to remove.
Do you have a recommendation to replace, John? Or should it replace?
I think same recommendation, 24-inch box. That's something we need to talk about, how species gets chosen and where they go, but at least a 24-inch box.
Second
Oh, yeah, motion to agree with John on removal.
and second.
Okay, and we have a roll call. Commissioner Cullinan,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lennon,
Yes.
Commissioner Mizuraka,
Aye.
Commissioner Tolbert,
Yes,
Chair Donnelly.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
All right, this, help me with what it's called, Kat. It's a
Mimosa.
It's a mimosa tree at 19024 Juniper Drive, and this one is in the right-of-way.
Yeah, this one's a really nice looking tree too, and it's not breaking the sidewalk, but it is doing a number on the driveway apron and the curb and the asphalt in the street. So I don't really see a way to mitigate what's going on and still save the tree. It's the wrong tree. Any tree would be the wrong tree in that location. This one's the wrong tree. I just don't see a way to save it unless you want to change curb locations and like go to that kind of an extent. Again, we've got to figure these things out. I would say based on what we have to work with now, as much as I hate to say it, it probably should come out.
And is the location unsuitable for replacement because of the size of the landscaping strip?
It is. It's that narrow planter strip where trees just should not be planted.
Do you have a motion?
got a question. So if you can't plant trees in that 3-foot strip, where should it be planted?
It's a good question. I would prefer, and it doesn't really work in this case because the front yard has several trees in it, I would prefer to see street trees or street replacement trees go behind the sidewalk with a root barrier along the back of the sidewalk. So it's got that whole front yard area to root rather than trying to root in these narrow little strips. I think if we try to choose the appropriate tree for a narrow strip, it's going to be a crepe myrtle. And I think everybody's kind of done with crepe myrtles. They're small. They don't make, they don't create any kind of canopy. They don't sequester virtually anything. I don't think it's a solution. I think it's getting the right trees in the right location. And it's typically not in a planter strip.
John, is it fair to say that, like, how old these are, like 30 to 50 years ago, before the city was as dense as it is, we just made poor decisions on locations of some of these larger trees, and therefore we're kind of in a bind here with where you just feel like backed into a corner and there's no other option but to remove a mature tree?
This is a style of urban development all over the Bay Area, all over the state, is to put these narrow, I don't know why, but planter strips are the standard. And yeah, now we're suffering the consequences of a waste of 30 or 40 years of tree growth because there's no way to work around it. A much better design, we don't have to go into design right now, would be a contiguous curb, gutter, and sidewalk, no planter strip, and then planting the tree behind that. That would have kept us out of this situation. And I think another conversation, and this is, maybe one with Mike, is how important are the trees? Do we want to take a tree that's causing damage and route a sidewalk around it or route a curb into the street around it. We do that. It's not common, but it's not uncommon, but it costs a lot of money, and it's about priorities. So are we going to make that tree the priority? Are we going to make the infrastructure that priority? That's a long discussion, not for here probably right now, but.
Completely concur. And it is something that the department's working on in conjunction with city manager's office and Jennifer's office. And it's an entangled problem. And you bring up the location here, a bulb out could potentially fix the problem. And this is a curb bulb out that eliminates a parking spot. It could potentially fix the problem of the curb and gutter and the street, but not the driveway. And so now you're talking about moving the driveway, and moving a driveway is about $7,000 or $8,000 at the cheap end, and $12,000-$15,000 at the expensive end, putting a new driveway in. One of the questions I had, John, I understand crepe myrtles are the go-to. Napa's got a lot of those, but we also over in Napa, we have a, just as a citizen that knows and used to work there, we have the category, I just looked it up online, Category 2 medium tree planting list. And on that list, red maples, crimson king maples, European hornbeams, ginkgos, crepe myrtle, Chinese pistache, blue oaks, California peppers, and little leaf linden. One of the things that I've been trying to find time to sit down and talk with you on is, could we pursue something like this to where in these smaller spaces, the landscape strip, with the proper root barrier and the proper planting plan details, specifications followed, is there a tree or two that could be more successful in these limited space areas?
There are a few. Most of the ones you just mentioned are not. Most of those are 40 foot, 45 foot or taller. Ginkgos gets 60, 70 feet. So if you're talking about a 2 foot or 3 foot planter and a tree that ultimately has a trunk that wide, sooner or later, it's all going to catch up with you. But there are other smaller trees, like crepe myrtle, that you could use to mix in. My concern there is it doesn't add much in terms of a canopy, a canopy that mitigates heat islands and creates shade and ambiance in a neighborhood. They're dinky little trees. They're beautiful. They're great. There's nothing wrong with them. They just really don't do what a street tree was intended. So there might be probably discussion around that definition of what a street tree should be.
Yeah, and great point. And in terms of the urban forest that we were talking about previously, this is a separate issue for a separate space. And thank you for bringing my attention. I was reading the wrong list. That was for the medium plus trees. For the smaller trees, let me just run these by you. Japanese maple red, Tartarian maple, western redbud, Merlot redbud, bronze loquat, the Fatina, the red choke cherry, the saucer magnolia, and the chaste tree. And, no need for you to critique this at this time, but this is one of those projects that I have been wanting to take time to sit down and have a conversation with you about so that we can come up with a list of trees that we promote to homeowners to put in these parkscape strips, landscape strips that have a better chance of succeeding. Because in Napa, we had the liquid amber removal fest, along with the Modesto ash and the magnolia. And those trees were planted 25, 30 years ago, and they just completely destroyed the sidewalks, curb and gutter in many locations. And yeah, 25 years from now, I refuse for all of us to be sitting here talking about this 25 years from now about the mistake that we made tonight when we didn't fix the problem.
Much better tree selection for small.
And there's a cost issue here because there's a ginkgo forest over there right beyond Friedman's, and every sidewalk, every driveway is disrupted by those ginkgos. But Ron's point is that many times the homeowners buy a house, they didn't choose the tree, the developer of the city put it in a public strip, and yet their driveway is a trip hazard and so forth, and so that's their expense. So if we're going to start doing other mitigating things, then we have to look at how we're going to share the cost burden. Is what I learned from that, yeah.
And here again, we've been trying to find time to work on this. We've been getting all of our different municipal codes, resolutions, programs, internal, some of the ones that are published about how we attack this problem and try to start cleaning up and update the different codes and programs that we have. We are currently working on that. We're just finishing our first step. Trees is something I bring to the pros. My sidewalk program is not. And so I'll give the commission snippets as we move along. This is a really involved program, and I don't know that you guys are always interested in sidewalk displacements. However, 75-90% of the ones that we have in town here are created by roots and tree roots that are really close to the curb and gutter or the sidewalk. Yeah, so we are currently working on that. It is turning into a priority. It's moving up in the queue, and we're getting ready to get moving on it.
Thank you. Are there other trees?
Just looking for a motion on this one.
Okay.
And a recommendation if you want to not replace it at all or replace on site.
24-inch box, I definitely want to replace it somewhere. If they don't have room in their yard, front yard, it could be backyard, they could give it to the city. But if a tree's coming out, personally, I want a tree to go back in, period.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Cullinan, sorry.
Yes.
Vice Chair Lennon,
Yes.
Commissioner Mizuraka, Commissioner Tolbert,
Yes.
Chair Donnelly.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
All right, last one, 1175 Brockman Lane. It's a magnolia.
We've been in this neighborhood before. Magnolia is the wrong tree. They've got some soil conditions out there that are causing trees to root very shallowly. We've seen it before, we're going to see it again. I don't see any way around this unless, again, we want to start considering moving sidewalk. And I don't think we'd have to move a curb here, but the sidewalk would have to wrap into private property to be able to save it. So in the absence of that, unfortunately, would say remove the tree.
There's so little shade on this street. I live in this neighborhood. And just as a light note, my son, who's 3, rides a scooter, and his favorite part of the ride to the high school is riding over the bump that this tree creates. Absolutely. Mommy, go to the bump. So anyways, he will be devastated when it's flattened out. There are lots of magnolias on this street, so I presume they sort of all will have the same fate over time.
We've taken out quite a few, and most of the rest are going to end up coming.
Yeah, and there's no shade in
No.
that at all.
There's plenty
It's
of
too
room
bad.
there for more replacement tree.
This would be an ideal place to request the tree go behind the sidewalk in the yard. There's lots of room there, just not back in the planter strip. This is another situation that I think John brought up where we've approved removal in this neighborhood before, and there's a lot of places they never got replaced, and I don't know how we follow up with something like that. I don't know if they were planted and they died, they didn't get irrigated, or they never got planted, but the neighborhood's getting pretty skimpy on trees.
Yeah, we need a follow-up procedure for that, to your point. Like,
Is
who's
there one?
really, who really follows up on this? Like, if the 24-inch box gets replanted, are we going to be talking about all these applications that we approved maybe next year as part of PROS? Like, the trees came out, but what went in, and sort of following up?
So currently, and Public Works wasn't involved in the tree committee before, so I'm not sure, but we could probably find those notes and go back and look at those, John. Currently, our Public Works inspector, who's going to process the encroachment application to take this tree out, will then follow up and make sure that it's replaced. The encroachment permit will have conditions of approval on it that say you have to replace it with this in this much time, and then he'll make sure that that happens. He can follow up on it to make sure it's okay, but at some point it's going to kind of fall off our radar unless we figure out a process to continue to look at them.
So another thing maybe we should include in our recommendation a requirement for a replacement tree. If irrigation isn't provided for a replacement tree, it's unlikely to survive. Most people are not going to go out with a hose, I don't think, and hand water trees. So I don't know how we address, that's part of that replace it with a 24-inch box, guarantee it survives for 3 years, or whatever definition we come up with, would be some way to ensure that real replacement, no net loss happens.
Can you require some sort of watering system? I mean, depending on what it is, I know some trees don't have to be irrigated forever, right? You just got to get them going.
No, the many trees don't have to be, but first couple of years, for sure, to get them established, so. Should be.
It ought to be made specific what is required.
I think so.
I think the issue is if it gets replanted on private property, like what control do we have over whether or not people even want to water their yard, right? Like, I'm not sure we have that kind of pull as much as it would be ideal.
Can you bond? Can you make them bonded?
Well, that would be complex, but what we can do is we can do 1, 2, 3 year inspections, going back to John's point of follow-ups. And basically, there has to be a guarantee that the tree will be healthy after that 3rd year, and then the contract would be complete. And if the tree wasn't at that time, we could go back and say, look, it's year 2, and you didn't water this, you're going to be required to put another one in. And then the clock would start over again. Yeah, that's standard. And we bond with contractors, bonding with homeowners. Yeah, that would be complex.
But it seems like if there's building codes, if you're building a house, there should be codes that could be enforceable for replanting a tree. They may not exist, but it doesn't mean they can't exist.
So, one, we need to look at the code to see what it specifically says that we can and can't do as far as regulation of implementation. And then that would be something that we would bring up as part of the discussion when we all meet together about what's missing in our code and policies right now and how do we want to address that moving forward. I have seen it where landscape plans and or the trees themselves are identified on plans. So like that's how we do development plans is they identify the tree that needs to be saved. 1211 Broadway is an example of this. The tree has to be kept. And so we will go into the future recognizing that that tree had to be there. So it's part of the process that we need to still create around replacement because they technically under the code, the way it's written, it's an option that you guys have to actually require them to replace. So we need to get more guidance on what does that replacement look like and maintained and things like that. So we'll work on that.
Motion to approve the tree removal of the magnolia on 1175 Brockman and replace it somewhere on the property with a 24-inch box.
I'll second.
Second. Did you second?
He did.
Okay, now you get a vote. Commissioner Cullinan,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lennon,
Yes.
Commissioner Misraka,
Aye.
Commissioner Tolbert,
Yes.
Chair Donnelly.
Yes.
The
Uh,
motion carries unanimously.
I just add that last night I went to a wonderful presentation that Patricia Cullinan organized for the Historic Society with the WAPO indigenous people in this area and talking about their kinship with all our relatives, which include more than the human world. And so I'm thinking we should also be thinking of some kind of healing ceremony of forgiveness for these trees that we're cutting down. It wasn't their fault they were planted in the wrong spot. So yeah, yeah, put that in the plan book. Yeah.
Chair Donnelly, we went through a bunch of motions. We should probably just check for public comment in case there's anyone who wants to talk
Thank
on
you very
this.
much. Are there public comments? Oh, Jared, sorry.
I also think that the turnaround should be quicker. because the fact that the trees could be saved in the 6-month time span that you're waiting, for example, the fourth one possibly could have been saved if there was a quicker turnaround, and then also the cost associated, because in that 6 months it could tear up a sidewalk further, causing like more repair costs.
Absolutely.
So that's another reason for the
Great
quicker turnaround.
Very good. Thank you.
We have one hand raised on Zoom. We have Tom Conlon. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, commissioners. I appreciate this conversation and all the effort you're putting into these individual trees. And I agree that the process that sounds like you're in the early stages of forming will really be something that the city would benefit from and make your jobs easier, I think, over time. But there's going to be a lot of work between where we are now and getting that process well developed and implemented. One addition that occurs to me, tying back to my comments at the beginning of the meeting, would be to consider what the carbon impact of the decisions you've made tonight would be. You know, to take a mature tree down, even if it was put in the wrong place, and replace it with a 24-inch box tree, will that small tree, even if it is successful, how much of the carbon that you decided to remove tonight would be replaced by the 2030 carbon goals or the 2045 net zero goal? I think that's some information that would be helpful to put in front of people and something your consulting arborist would be able to potentially help you with in the future. So the other comment I had briefly, because I couldn't speak on the previous topic there, my hand was raised, but it wasn't recognized. With respect to David Gillen's comments about possible revenue measures, the SCTA board met on Monday, and there is in that packet an assessment of the various tax and revenue raising opportunities in all the jurisdictions throughout the city, how close we are to our sales tax cap in each of the jurisdictions, and also an assessment of the ballot measures that have been proposed that will fill up the remaining cap. So I just think it'd be helpful for commissioners and the city staff to be aware. Some of that homework has already been done for you. It might be, I'll probably shoot a link to that over to Jennifer this evening. So thank you for consideration of my comments and let me go along.
I'm sorry that I did not recognize you. I think I thought your hand was up from the previous time. I'm getting used to doing the Zoom thing, so I apologize for that.
Can I say something? Just in response to Tom, for whatever it's worth and wherever it fits. We have a tree ordinance in Windsor where we made really huge attempts to replace canopy in kind. So rather than replacing this nice magnolia with a skinny little 24-inch box, in Windsor they would be required to provide several 48-inch boxes, several 36s, and some 24s, such that the canopy of the replacement tree is close to the canopy area of the tree being removed. Focused more on developers rather than, that would be punitive and not reasonable probably for a homeowner. But it serves two really good functions. Number one, it discourages people from taking out trees because there's a hit. I mean, a big hit, and it gets us closer to no net loss. Big tree for little tree, as Tom was saying. Just something to think about.
To Tom's point, and to my point earlier about what kinds of trees we are talking about in all these different topics, does the city have a policy about recommending drought-resistant, carbon-absorbing trees that don't need irrigation? I mean, in our recommendations, is that part of the process? Anyone know?
We have a tree list, but it doesn't seem like it's the appropriate trees, especially for street trees. So that's part of what we're hoping to improve.
Any further discussion before we move on to the next agenda item? Okay. Next and last one is the discuss and consider the conceptual design for the rehabilitation of Olson Park as presented by Land Culture, LLP. The staff recommends approving the conceptual design, and we'll have a discussion.
Thank you, Chair Donnelly. I'm very excited about this item. We've been talking about the rehabilitation of Olson since you guys formed as a commission back in March. It's one of the projects that Public Works has been working on and was in all our budget documents. So we've had our on-call landscape architect, Land Culture, working with us since the spring, and we've done a public survey and an on-site meeting and public outreach to kind of hear what the community would like to do there. And we formed all of those thoughts and visions and realized some of them were way out of our reach. You know, a lot of people would love to see bathrooms, and even without the bathroom piece, doing everything that we would love to do at that park is more money than I currently have in this budget. So Anne is here with Land Culture. She's going to present kind of our process and our final recommended conceptual design. Just for food for thought, even at this conceptual design, we're a little bit more than what I currently have allocated in the budget. So kind of think through whether or not there are any pieces of this that we could still peel off of that, or whether or not we'd like to move forward and potentially request more budget in the next fiscal year. And we can talk about that more at the end.
Oh, great. Thanks, Oriana. Is this on? Can you guys hear me okay? Great. Well, thank you. It's so nice to be here. It's really great to hear your commission's process. My name's Ann Baker. I'm a landscape architect with Land Culture LLP. Hi, John. We have offices in Petaluma and also in Santa Cruz. We focus on ecological design. We have a lot of experience with working with native plants and restoration, also with parks and natural open spaces. We've done a lot of work on fuel reduction and fire-resistant landscapes, and kind of grew up in the Bay Area, so very familiar with local ecosystems and culture. So anyway, we're delighted to be working with you all. And also I'll mention I was first chair of the Petaluma Climate Action Commission, so that was another interesting part of your conversation tonight, and I'm still on that commission today. So so we're here tonight to talk about Olson Park and the improvements to the park. We've been given a mission to renovate an existing park and to incorporate the community preferences in that renovation. We've done an extensive community process, which I'll detail. We really understood that the community wanted us to improve the park and make it more beautiful, more welcoming, but not necessarily a wholesale change. And we also understand that we have to be cost efficient with the budget that we have. We can't do everything that we'd like to do. But we want to make the park more functional, more beautiful, more well-loved by the community, and really have it be a vibrant neighborhood park. So I'm going to walk you through the process that we've gone through. So this is existing conditions map, just kind of displays diagrammatically what the elements are in the existing park and how they do and do not work well together. There's essentially four main elements. There's the playground in the I have to get my quadrants here. The northeast quadrant, there's a kind of a somewhat defunct picnic area in the southeast quadrant, and existing very popular basketball court, and also a lawn area that's very popular. So it's essentially three parts of the park are very popular, and the picnic area is not as well maintained and not as well used. And there were a lot of kind of things that we noticed when we looked at the existing conditions. The access to the park is on Linda Drive, so it's not got a lot of parking associated with it. And then the other ways to the park are out of the community or from on the north side, and then from the community bike path on the south side. So it really is a neighborhood park. It doesn't necessarily need to be a destination park where lots of people are driving to it, because it wouldn't work that well necessarily for the community. And we noticed there were some unused lawn areas that we could turn into some other purposes, for example. And you see a diagram where there's some existing drainage that kind of comes from the center of the park down into the southwest corner. So we'd like to preserve that. These are some photos of the existing park. You can see the basketball court in the upper left, the not so exciting picnic area in the upper center. the entrance off the bike path in the upper right, and then the existing play structure there, which is a pretty good play structure. It's got some life left in it. We had it looked at by Landscape Structures, which does a lot of the playgrounds locally, and they definitely recommended to keep the structure, but to make some improvements to it. So I can go. Yeah. Okay. So in our community process, what we did was we started with a community survey. We were really fortunate. We had over 240 responses, which is really a fantastic level of response for an online survey. And so this graphic puts together kind of the bigger the font is, the more we heard it, and more loudly and clearly. So obviously shade really jumps out. That was really something that came up over and over. People really love the basketball, want some paving improvements. The items in yellow, as Oriana spoke to, bathrooms wasn't something that we felt like we could commit to at this stage. It's kind of a larger community conversation about the maintenance costs and construction costs of bathrooms and where they would make sense in community parks. So that's probably like a parks master plan topic. And also the pickleball, our approach to the pickleball would be ideally to share the existing basketball court, work out some kind of timeshare so that it could be used occasionally for pickleball, but not to increase the court surface in the park. And so we heard that their toddler play would be nice because the structure is really more for kids in the kind of 5 to 7 range. There's as much for much younger kids, and swings, fountains, benches. You can see there's a bunch of items there that came up in the survey. We held a community visioning workshop on a Saturday in a park. Trina was there, which was great. Actually, the Climate Action Commissioner was there. We had a really nice turnout to that, too. We had about 37 individuals. And we did this presentation where we talked about the existing conditions and then broke into small groups, and people talked in small groups and about what they liked about the park, what they'd like to see different, how it really served their neighborhood, how could they love it more, things like that, and put together all the little sticky notes of different ideas that they had, and the green dots exercise in the lower right is looking at images that we presented of different play structures and types of elements, and so we could get a kind of take people's temperature a little bit on what kinds of things they like, what they look like, which kind of play structures they like, those kinds of things. And then we held just last month, we held an online community feedback meeting going over this same concept plan that we're talking about here tonight. And we had really nice attendance to that as well. I think do you remember how many people were there? Yeah, I think about 30, which was really, really great. And so we were able to do some surveys in that Zoom meeting, and these are the results of those surveys. And I added this slide actually because I thought people might want to see it. This slide wasn't in your packet. So the things that people like the most are at the top. They like the new shaded, and I'll go through these in the plan, but they like the new shaded DG entry area and retrofitting the existing play structure. They like the toddler sand play area with the toy boat that we recommended. There was a little less support, but still pretty broad support for a new lawn and picnic area and a butterfly and pollinator garden. The items that weren't as well responded to was we had proposed a mural on a large blank wall on the west side of the park, and then we'd proposed some workout elements like balance beam and a workout zone structure, and that didn't seem to, anyway, that evening get as much support. And then finally, people liked more benches and some shade trellis structures that we had created. So here's the concept plan. And does it look fuzzy on your screen? Because it looks fuzzy on mine. It looks good up there, but looks good. It does? Okay, good. Yeah. Great. So what we did was, one of the things that we noticed about the existing park was it had those 4 elements, but it really didn't have anything in the center that connected them all. So we tried to bring the picnic area and the playground and the lawn together in a way that was a little more dynamic. And I'll show a blow up in a minute. You'll be able to see it better. But just to give you an overview of the changes that we did, kind of starting in the upper right-hand part of the drawing, we narrowed the paved entry actually, we widened the paved entry space a little bit as you're coming in off Linda Drive and added some bike parking there and created a DG paved, decomposed granite paved picnic area with shade trees. And that was an area of lawn that wasn't really that well used. And so we wanted to bring trees right out to the streets, a little bit like this conversation you've been having. Like how can we get more trees in the park? And then we, you can see there's kind of this looping path that comes around from the north side that goes around the top of the play structure. And that had a large hedge in it that a lot of people felt was blocking views and created a sense of not safety in the park. And so we're proposing removing that and putting trees in that planter instead, which would give a lot of shade to the play structure from the west when you get the hot afternoon sun. And then we added a new loop path and a small lawn area in the picnic area on the west side of the park, and made some other improvements, which I'll detail a little more here. So this is just kind of getting a little closer in so you can see more clearly what I'm talking about. So item number 1 is the new decomposed granite picnic area at the entry. There's a couple picnic tables there. Number 2 is a paved area. It's got the yellow is a little bike rack. We enlarged the play structure area, so we've added number 14, which is an inclusive swing. So we have more inclusive play elements there, and the purple boxes on top of the play structure are shade toppers that go on top of the structure that provide much more shade than the tiny little caps that are on there now. You can see the planters with the trees that I described. Item number 4 is a semicircular seating area that we created right in the center so that people could look at the toddler sand play area, which is number 5, and also the existing play structure. And the red things there are movable Adirondack chairs, so people could move around their chairs and kind of create little seating arrangements in that space. Number 7 is a picnic area. So that's another DG area with 2 picnic tables in it, and it has planters around it with trees in them. We worked really hard to pull the trees as much as possible out of the lawn areas, and we've added 42 trees overall into the park, most of them big shade trees. So we're really trying to work on the climate amelioration and also sequestration in the park. So these picnic areas and this lawn area is meant to be a little more intimate. So it's for birthday parties or small group gatherings. It's meant to be flexible so people could sit on the lawn. They could have 2 parties happening at the same time or 1, and still very close to the play areas, so that those are, especially number 7, so that that's all kind of happening in the center of the park. And then additionally, we have proposed element number 9, which is on the right side, which is an additional loop path. And that's an optional element. We're not sure that we can fit that into the budget of the project right now, but it's something that the community said they wanted was kind of more loop paths for walkers and also for toddlers to ride bikes. We have the smaller one around the picnic area, but it'd be nice if we could add the second one and then kind of introduce more native plantings and interesting plantings along those paths. There was definitely a desire for more beautification and also more nature play that came out in that visioning session. Doesn't want to go. Gonna move forward? Thanks. Okay, so then this is a blow up of the southern half. And we didn't do as much in the southern half of the park. You can imagine if your budget's a little limited, you want to kind of push all your, kind of focus a little bit your effort in some areas, because then you can make a little more dramatic change. But what we did in the bottom half was item number 10, there's some very sad trees that are in a raised curb at the edge of the basketball court there. And so we're proposing to remove those trees, remove the curb so that the planter is at the same elevation as the paving, and so more water can run into the planter when it rains, and then replace the trees there. And then on either side, item 13 is 2 benches with a constructed shade trellis and a vine. So there's shaded seating for the basketball play area. And number 2 is kind of pinching off a couple kind of these corners of the lawn area and introducing some shade trees, and that's also happening opposite the basketball court. So again, really making the effort to pull the trees out of the lawn area. We'd be moving the irrigation away from those trees so that their irrigation is not spraying the tree trunks, which is really not great for them. And then item number 11 is, and also 8, those two elements on that side of the park are butterfly garden and habitat garden, and adding more beautiful plants into the park. And 12 is the optional play area, the workout zone area. And then a little bit happening on the community path, a couple large trees and more hedgerows, which actually was also on the north side of the park, to give a little more buffer to the neighbors on the north and south parts of the park. And just to run through what these changes look like. So this is an image of the existing play structure. We're proposing changing the two circled elements there so that there's new climbing elements that are more up to date, and those are shown on the right, those two pictures on the right side of the page. And then on the lower image, we're talking about changing out those play elements to the ones just to the right there. So new climbing structures and safer, little more safe, so there's a little more control of the fall zone on the structure there. And then on the right side, including some of the little toadstools and elements like the tree tunnel where we can fit them in so that there's a little more toddler play area around the playground. The image on the left is the shade sail topper that goes on top of the existing structure. It's the most cost-effective way to get more shade right on the structure. Rather than, we looked at shade sails, and those would be expensive and also somewhat cumbersome, and this is much more direct atop the existing structure. So there were two of those, and then the image on the right is the toy boat for the sand play area, and then we're proposing changing the surfacing in the playground from the existing sand, which is not an accessible material, to the engineered wood chips, which is an accessible material and also a fairly affordable material. The only other option is the rubberized mat material, which is quite expensive, unfortunately, and also adds to the heat island effect and a number of other issues. So we're recommending the engineered wood chips. The middle bottom image is an inclusive swing, and then the image in the lower right corner is an example of a children's little sand play area. And then just a few other images here, the Adirondack chairs, so you can kind of get a sense of what we're saying there. So movable chairs are pretty popular in parks now because they just allow people to feel a little more at home, have a little more control over where they're sitting. Then we're proposing a cornhole game in the smaller lawn area that we created, and other games could go in there as well, like slack lines and things like that. Spike ball, as the trees grow up, they can do slack lines. The image on the right is a decomposed granite picnic area, and then in the lower left, another decomposed granite pathway. So that's what we're proposing for some of the new paving, so that it's permeable and a little different from the existing concrete. So there'd be concrete pathways and decomposed granite ones. And then the lower right image is the workout zone idea, which we're showing as optional. And that's something that could be done, I think, at any time, or might be done on a plan for the whole bike path, for example. You could look at including those elements on the bike path. And finally, this is the last image, so kind of going back to our tree conversation that we've been having a lot of today. The two images on the left are ideas for reference images for the butterfly gardens and the habitat gardens. So larger shrubs that are flowering, that invite birds and bees and provide a little more color, maybe some informal pathways in them, like shown here. So those two images that's there, and then some ideas for trees. On the bottom, we have the redbud, which is a smaller tree that we were proposing by the basketball courts, and then a larger Arbutus marina. You have existing strawberry trees there, so we were thinking this would complement those, but it's a much bigger tree. It's really similar to our native madrone with a nice orange bark. And then to the right, the lower right one is the, I wish I had a pointer, but the lower right one is the chase tree that was on the list that Mike was reading. And so that's a summer flowering, beautiful tree, and that was proposed in the area of the butterfly garden against the community path. And then the big shade trees that we're proposing are a silver linden for the areas adjacent to lawn, and very big, long-lived shade tree, nice silver tone underneath the leaves and create some kind of movement and light, and then some native oaks, particularly for the kind of northern and northwestern part of the park. And these are preliminary, but want to give you an idea of what we were thinking of in terms of the plants. And so this is really, we're delighted to be here and to give this presentation. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your feedback on the concept plan. Give us some idea where to go from here to fulfill kind of the community's desires. So thank you very much.
So I'd love to hear your comments and questions. We're looking for sort of a recommendation to approve this concept plan and ask Anne to continue forward into construction drawings so that we could create this vision.
Okay.
I'm wondering, why wouldn't you take advantage of this retrofit to include a Muriaki component? It's not any criticism of the design, as we're talking about redoing a park or part of a park. Seems like there could be potentially a portion of a new or renovated park that if everybody's into it.
I think we can find a place for that. Mr. Morrell was at the visioning meeting on site there, and we talked about like potential locations for that, kind of to the west of the basketball court. My understanding of his vision is sort of similar to what we're doing here. When he described it to me at KT Carter Park, it's more of like a native garden with dense trees. So we are trying to find places and not necessarily like bamboo or the visions that I've seen of his park, the trees that actually fit in Sonoma. So I think that we are trying to represent that here. But if you think we could do it differently, help to where. Yeah.
Question is, so replacing the sand, is that strictly an ADA consideration?
Yeah, largely, because we're updating the structure, so you really should update the approach to it and everything so that it is accessible. And the sand is not as good as a fall material either, so the engineered wood fiber actually is better for protecting kids in falls.
Yeah, that occurred to me. I watched the Zoom presentation, which was very informative, but I'm thinking it's like the sand. I mean, you go to the beach and it's sand, but I can see people with disabilities not being able to access it.
Yeah, I think that's the primary reason to make the change. The sand is people are a little mixed in the community. Some people really like it. Some people don't like it as much. Some people think it's dirty. Some people think the kids love it. And so it's not universally well loved, but I think if there weren't the accessibility issue, we probably wouldn't change it because we're stretched for budget. Yeah. So, but I think that is going to be a requirement.
And it was one of the comments that I received a bunch on all sides. So people either love the sand or hate the sand, and people don't like the bark. So I got a lot of questions about whether or not we could put in that plastic matting, which is probably way out of the capacity for the budget of this project. So what the substrate is problematic, but the bark seems like the best recommendation that fits with making it more accessible, and kind of to offset people who really liked having sand in that park is why we're proposing that toddler area that still has sand play.
So Oriana, at the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned that we're stretched on budget for this, right? So what elements of the optional versus the proposed plan are included in your comment? Like, what are we working, where are the edges on the project? Is it, if we take out the workout equipment, we're within the budget? Or, I'm trying to get a sense of like, I think the council, no matter what we say here tonight, is going to have the question, like, what is the reasonable expectation of cost? And do we have the funding to support it? And so I just want to know kind of where we are. Are we talking about $50,000 or?
As it's proposed without the workout equipment, we're still about $100,000 over what I have programmed currently for the project. What I have programmed currently includes an ask for next year, so we could potentially increase the ask in the general fund for next year and decrease some other projects, so it's not like an increase overall to the general fund. We can just change some money around in my future budget. But right now, as I have our 5-year CIP program, it's about $400,000, and this, as it's laid out without the workout equipment, is about $5 million. And so some of the places that we can pull that back is that path that's been removed. We can remove some of the playground equipment that we're putting in. We could remove the shade trellises. Those are the kind of big items, but it starts to feel less exciting the more big pieces you take away.
And number 9, sorry, I had a quick question. The element number 9, which is the optional path.
Yeah.
Is that decomposed granite proposed, or is that concrete?
That was proposed as concrete. That isn't currently in the budget, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah, it was proposed really as a toddler bike route, so then in that sense, it really makes sense to make it concrete. There's other ways to introduce like a mulched path or something that wouldn't be accessible, that would be a lot more affordable, if that was really a desired kind of route,
Are there any other elements of this that are not included in the budget we
The
should be aware
mural.
of? Mural.
Mm-hmm. They're all listed, it was listed as optional, kind of in parentheses on the listing on the plan. There were 3 things that were listed as optional.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and since the topic of the budget has come up, there's the capital cost to do this, which you're saying $400,000. What about maintaining it? I mean, because if we spend that much money to put it in, what's the projected maintenance to keep it showroom?
I don't think we're adding that much maintenance than what's already there. We met with Anthony, the maintenance supervisor, as part of our process to kind of hear, what he thinks about the current maintenance. And that's part of the reason why we added we kind of removed some lawn area and then added a small lawn area. So we tried to keep the area of lawn roughly the same, just make it more useful to people. And then we would have liked to have done a water play element in the sand area, but we felt like that was going to be some additional maintenance that maybe would be hard to support. The other maintenance is establishing the trees, and the plants. And there's different ways to approach that. I mean, you can have that be part of the construction contract, that there's a 3-month maintenance period or 6-month, so that the plants are really established by the contractor. They're kind of on the hook after they plant them to make sure they're successful. But we really tried not to add a lot of maintenance, and you can see that we restrained ourselves a little bit on the design. Like we really tried to just keep it as a neighborhood park and make what was there better rather than do a wholesale change, because we didn't think we had the budget to do a wholesale change, and we also thought it was largely a really well-loved, nice park. Like it warranted to do that. But we spent money on introducing all those trees for sure, and I think that's an investment. I would say regarding the Miyake idea, my only hesitation about doing something like that here is the visibility one, So in a public park, in a neighborhood like this, you want to have really good sight lines everywhere. And so when you do a really dense cluster of plantings, sometimes that creates a sense of lack of safety for some people. But I do think that we have created a lot more canopy than was there, and we could probably be even a little more aggressive in that. But we wanted to preserve the open lawn area because we thought that was really valuable for the neighborhood to be able just to go and play ball and have some nice lawn. I think it makes sense for communities to have Like you shouldn't have to have a perfect lawn in front of your house so much as if you have a really nice neighborhood park that you can play on the lawn. That's kind of, in my view, where we should be spending money on something like turf, is where it's really going to be used to play on.
This commission has spent a lot of time talking about trash cans, so my dinger goes off a little bit. If you're going to introduce, which I love, by the way, this much improved picnic area that could in fact host 2 birthday parties a weekend or a weekend day,
Yeah.
I think you're going to need to add trash location in another area besides just by the bike path.
No,
that
you're
was just
totally
a
right.
comment.
We haven't spent a lot of time on, there's some like lighting, bollards,
okay.
trash cans, like some of these more prosaic things that really don't land in the concept plan phase that
Fair.
much. They're really down the road in the design development and the construction documents, but you're absolutely right about that.
So I'll say to both your comments, my hope is that we've picked a trash can as a city, so this park will see big bellies as well. Good luck. Just for consistency. So, and we did move when we ordered them to order some extras, just so that they could fit into these park projects. So that's our plan for trash. And to the maintenance piece, like, we very much hear that council doesn't want to spend any more money on maintenance of parks and is concerned about our current capacity for that. So that was part of what we asked Ann to do, was not really to create more for Anthony to do. So we think we're pretty much there, and he's looked at it and is consistent with that.
This is really fun to have that vision shared with us. And I'm curious, in the public engagement, did the issue of dogs come up? And also, is there a water fountain in the park?
Yes, to both of those. Definitely dogs came up. That was also something that we felt like was a larger citywide conversation than we could, say yes or no to in this park. I would say that of the voices I heard, there was some support. There was probably more support for having dogs on leashes in the park than not having dogs at all. Just anecdotally, what I heard, but that wasn't a specific survey question that we asked. Your other question was about a water fountain, and yes, we're proposing one kind of in the center, like at the upper right part of the basketball court, and if you're looking at the drawing. So a new water fountain with a water bottle filler, so it's very useful.
And pickleball fell by the wayside, is that?
Well, the idea with pickleball is kind of the balance. We're trying to strike a balance between active and passive recreation. So we didn't really want to introduce another court in this particular park, and we thought that the basketball court could get a different striping, and you could set up pickleball. So it's more a question of a recreation question, like when are the times when it's not being used as basketball that much that it could become available for pickleball. And so it would have like a schedule, basically. Basketball, pickleball.
Yeah, anecdotally on that point, in the visioning meeting, it was a lot of the neighborhood, as you can imagine, who showed up to it, and there was quite a strong view that the noise that pickleball creates. I mean, to me, it doesn't seem much different than basketball bouncing, but nonetheless, people were concerned about having permanent pickleball courts available to people there. So maybe there's a compromise on,
they would have had to go in that
uses.
picnic area too, which is closer to a number of neighbors that haven't had a loud part of the park there. So that was our compromise on pickleball. And also thinking maybe there was another couple of parks in the community that would be better suited for it. Yep.
I want to say that I think your presentation and the design is so thoughtful. It's really deeply thoughtful. I'm just wondering about, it seems kind of glaringly missing the bathrooms, and I get there isn't money for that, but is there a long-term plan idea for that?
That is the number one thing that we heard, and I continued to hear it after our Zoom meeting, that people are really asking for bathroom facilities, not only here, but in all of our other parks too. So I think that is a larger conversation that we need to have when we look at how our funding for parks, the Park and Rec Department, all of the above, but it's just way out of the scope of the money we have for this.
What about temporary bathrooms?
Like porta potties? Mm-hmm. Yeah. The concern is that it's going to draw folks there. They're not very pretty. They're kind of smelly. It doesn't really go with this pretty design we're putting for but yeah.
Well, and it is a neighborhood park. I live very close by and spend a lot of time there with my kids when they're grown up and my grandson. And I think being a neighborhood park, you're close enough to go home for a restroom requirement. So,
Yeah, I mean, just looking at it from the design perspective, where would you put a restroom in this park? The part that appealed to me was functionally maybe to have it be associated with the bike path, that might make more sense and it might feel more comfortable to the community to have it located more in that thoroughfare, and it might be used by more people, or, it would become available for use for more people. So that's just a thought that when you look at bathrooms, you might look at how they relate to transportation corridors like that.
Yeah, and just to reemphasize something that was previously said, this is a future discussion of the bigger picture type things that we were talking about earlier. And one thing for sure is that when you do add a bathroom, you definitely add the maintenance, and that adds the cost. And this is something that we were talking about earlier. So, and the infrastructure, the sewer, the water, and the power, to get that in there can get very expensive to install. But here again, it's for a future conversation for a different day when we're talking about big picture plans. And, here's like, we have our planning director, community development, and these are the types of things that they help us craft based on how other agencies have incorporated things like this in, how other plans have worked that have been successful. But it's really taken a big bite of the apple.
Are we ready to go to public comment on this?
No, I have a question.
Okay.
I want to know about the water flow.
The water flow. Yeah, so the water flow would stay kind of moving from that corner.
Use the numbers. You can use the numbers.
Yeah, it's kind of, I wish I had a pointer. I got myself a laser pointer and then it didn't work on any of these things. Rats. Well, so basically the water would have to flow. It kind of flows from the north part of the park and then it kind of slants toward the west. And so there's a little bit of remnant ash trees, like it's a little remnant ash bog kind of, just on that side of the basketball court. And so we want to keep water shedding to that direction. The park doesn't have any drainage. It's like an older park. Like I have not seen any drain inlets. Yeah, so it has to come across there and there. So the trick is for us to maintain the drainage across the lawn and those DG paths into that lower area of the park. And so what we'll be looking at is permeable base rock and perhaps small drainage structures just to go under the paths and making sure that the contours of the lawn continue the drainage in the existing patterns. We basically don't want to change any of the existing patterns.
So was that the butterfly garden was in that area though? Is that what?
The butterfly garden, so there's was a little more to the butterfly garden is a little more to the west than where the water's been flowing. It's actually flowing really closer to the existing path that kind of curves around between the picnic area and the playground. So it's on the north.
I'm trying.
You're doing a great job.
There we go. Okay, we have Tom Conlon with his hand raised. Tom, you can speak. Is it working? I don't know what happened here. He's muted. I think so. Can you talk now, Tom?
Goes to a written comment? Just while we're waiting, it was very interesting, the conversations about the Park and Rec Department and all those conversations you're having vis-à-vis the Climate Action Commission, because a lot of those conversations, the same ones are happening in Petaluma. It'd be really interesting to see maybe if the different communities could compare notes and kind of share resources, because everyone's kind of tackling the same problems and taking different approaches, so I think that could be really supportive.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate all the effort. I know it's not easy. I'm hearing a bit of an echo. Can you hear me?
I just fixed that. Sorry, my internet went out in the middle of it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all this effort to accommodate me here as a remote attendee tonight. I want to just add my voice to all the positive commentary. I've been very impressed with the conceptual plan as laid out by our consultant. So, Ann, thank you very much for all the hard work on this. And thank you to the city staff, because this is a very successful outreach campaign to get public input that Ann has been able to work with. I understand we're budget constrained, and I do hope that we don't pinch pennies in a way that will be foolish long term on this project. So I do look forward to some creative scoping when it comes to CIP plan development. I think the priorities as laid out in this discussion tonight are very sound, though. I want to support conceptual conversation. I did have two comments. One is that because bathrooms were such a priority, and because we are still at this early conceptual stage, I would like to see a little effort placed on, if we were to get a budget option to afford bathrooms at some future date, where would they go so that the sewer, water, and power costs would be minimized, as Director Berger pointed out. And then the second comment is that I know drainage is important, and I just recall that south of the bike path, right alongside the bike path there, and into the adjacent neighbor's yard over the fence to the right of the bike path, that area is tremendously wet historically, and I think that neighbor may have put in some drainage there to reduce the water. So those are my comments. Once again, I just really appreciate all the good effort that's gone into this. Thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize for that hiccup there.
Yeah, maybe perhaps if there was a phase 2 of the project, we should incorporate some of those priority features of the park at least in conceptual design. Is that something that we could do?
You could essentially take the concept plan and make it a master plan, and then, say, this is what we're going to do now, and then you would have a record of what the community supported at this time and how it fits into the design. So it does make sense that you would kind of fit everything in, even if you couldn't afford it now, because if you don't create room for it, you won't be able to do it later. So then you'd have the master plan which would essentially be this concept plan, with the optional items. It wouldn't involve a lot more work, but you'd have that as a record that you could move forward from.
And just to carry that a little further, and a question would be, are you at the point where you could make a recommendation for the best spot for a bathroom? Because that would be something good to memorialize onto a plan. Now that you've invested this much time into it, you could probably hit it 85, 90% and just have it as a recommended location for future. However, to do the detailed study of where the PG&E hookups, the sewer hookups, and the water hookups are going to come from, that takes it to the next level. But it would be nice to be able to, in 10 years, when we all decide that we're going to put bathrooms in all the parks, to open up this plan set and see, oh, hey, what's that right there? And it's the proposed location that we came up with based on everything that we knew today. And then can we get the infrastructure to it as cheap as possible versus putting it somewhere else and having the sewer line being a third of the cost? So.
Yeah, I mean, I could propose a couple options pretty quickly, and then you'd probably want to hear what the community felt about that before it totally got memorialized, because my sense is there might be some strong opinions about where the bathroom would go.
This is true too.
Yeah. But I think we could certainly show a couple options, that make sense in terms of the design. Yeah, and what we've heard so far.
Do we have a motion, but it's not been seconded? Is that what I'm, yeah, I'll second the motion.
Jessica, were you the one that did the motion? Okay, sorry. Roll call vote. Commissioner Cullinan? Yes. Vice Chair Lennon?
Yes.
Commissioner Misuraka?
Aye.
Commissioner Tolbert?
Yes.
Chair Donnelly?
Yes,
The motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Our pleasure.
I think we're up to agenda item 4. Any comments from our members of the commission? Reports or comments?
Very quickly, in all the applications we went through today from private members of the community with respect to trees on their open space that fall under our jurisdiction, I'm curious as to how we address trees within open spaces that are not applied for, such as, Pinelli Park, or any of the parks really that have dying or trees in the same condition that John pointed out about, that are just not going to make it. How does this commission deal with those?
Well, the example I would have is last year we did a big assessment at the plaza. And I think we looked at the health of the trees and got a master tree recommendation of how we might maintain those. And we did do some maintenance on trees, and there were a few removals within those, but for dead trees. And the council looked at those and approved us to move forward. So I think if we did another big park project like that, we would do an assessment and bring it here for you guys to review as well.
Yeah, and we, in addition to phase 1 of the plaza trees, we also did the Depot Park trees. Not Depot, Field of Dreams. And we trimmed 100?
We trimmed 130 and we removed 3 dead redwoods. But we haven't, we remove them pretty much if they're dead. So, yeah.
Basically, I'm asking, if a community member brings up a tree that's in their local neighborhood park, such as Olson, take any one of the other neighborhood parks, and says, oh, Commissioner Lennon, this tree is definitely dead. What's being done about it? It's dropping needles all over the place and what have you. Do we just bring that to your attention and go from there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't have to fill out an application to take out a tree in a park. And we are proactive and reactive to those. So we'll do inspections. but we also listen to neighbors, park users, etc. And we've done quite a few removals in the cemeteries, in the parks, and on other public spaces since I've been here. And typically it's a need. Yeah, the tree's leaning, dropped a big limb, dying, etc.
We had some that were removed at Pinelli Park about 5 months ago that were dangerous and dead, and we had them evaluated and then taken out by customer or residents calling and bringing it to our attention, and then it going through the process.
Thank you.
And now we have the depot eucalyptus trees on the list. Is that
On my report tonight, got an update.
The only comment I have is that some of you probably saw there's been some discussion that our commission should meet on a bi-monthly basis instead of a quarterly basis. My own feeling is that if we're having this pause while we work out the plans to bring forth in the Parks and Recreation Department, that we don't need to meet that frequently. But I think we agreed when we had some discussion of this with Oriana that we could continue to meet on a quarterly basis, but always feel free to have a special meeting if it's needed. But we don't make a decision tonight, but I just want you to know that that's been floated out there, and be thinking about it. We can put it on the agenda next time if we so want to do that. Does the staff have any comments and reports?
Yeah, I have a list, and I'm just going to run through them, but you can jump in and ask me questions as I go. So since you brought it up at the beginning, I just want to touch back around onto the Measure M Oversight Committee, the meeting. So the annual report they're requesting that'll be presented at that meeting is for what they call our measure of effort. And it's essentially that they want to see that our parks operational funds haven't reduced over the bunch of fiscal years as they've been giving us Measure M, that we're not supplanting our ops funds with Measure M. And our ops funds have continued to increase from the general fund, so it's a really easy report. It'll say that we had an operational park budget of $1.3 million going into 23-24. And you guys are, of course, welcome to come. I'll be there on Zoom, but I don't think that we're presenting any Measure M projects at this meeting. There'll be another quarterly meeting in December where we'll probably present the annual report of money we spent for Measure M last fiscal year, which I'm not sure we have. We'll probably spend a little bit on this Olson project, I'll keep you informed about what that's looking like too. The second item I have, if you loved Olson Park, we're launching the effort at Sonoma Oaks in October for the playground feature that we're proposing there. It's going to be a little bit of a condensed version of what we did at Olson because we already kind of know what we want. We're not completely redoing the park. We're just proposing putting in a playground feature. So Anne already has some conceptual designs of what she thinks might work there, and they're mostly based on how much money we want to spend. She has a very little version and then a much grander version. So we'll be doing that October 21st at 11 to kind of meet with the neighborhood, and we're going to start advertising that process as well. The third thing I have is that we've ordered the big bellies. They should be here in November, and we'll be installing them in the plaza over the winter along with some bike racks at locations to be determined. And then I have an update. I think we applied for this after our last meeting, but Public Works applied for 2 grants from the state parks, the Recreational Trail Grant and Habitat Conservation Fund, and we've been asked to continue into the second phase for both of those. So a representative from State Parks is going to come out to the Overlook Trail and walk the different pieces of the trail that we're proposing to rehabilitate next Wednesday. So that's very positive, and it looks like we might get some funding to do the remainder of the repair work that's been proposed up there on the Overlook Trail. And then finally, we also submitted a grant to the EPA San Francisco Bay Water Quality Improvement Fund in last month sometime. And I have a little component in there just to put in your hats for a potential dense forest in Katie Carter Park. So if we do get funding there and that looks like something that the Joint Commission wants to do, we potentially have some seed money to start that if we get that grant. And that's all I got.
Oriana, could you send us images of the bike racks that you've chosen for the plaza? Because did that get approved by a different commission?
I didn't choose them, but
These are going to be put in on a trial basis.
Okay.
Yeah. They have been vetted, not by a commission. We want to get some bike racks out there quick. And so we came up with a concept. They're very basic, round, bolt into the ground, about 3 feet tall. You've probably seen them around. It's just a circle, almost a full circle.
A singular circle?
Yeah, singular circle that you could put 2 bikes up against easily, probably 4 if you're fitting them in there. Lock to it, they just bolt right into the ground. And we're working with community development to come up with like 5 locations around the plaza where they've already been ordered. And we just want to get them out there. There was enough interest that we didn't want to take any more time getting a full program in place. So we're doing a test batch, and we're going to see how well they're received. And this was in conjunction with Community Development, Public Works, and the City Manager's Office, amongst other people, input, outreach, but it was nothing official. I do not know yet, but I have helped look at 10 prospective spots.
I think that's it.
Yeah, I've got some items also from staff. I just was wondering, are there any more questions for Oriana or any of her items? Okay, I got 5 quick ones. I'll run through them fast. Just an update on the AED unit that we're putting in at the southeast corner of the plaza, kind of close to the entrance to City Hall on the right-hand side. We've got electrical concept ready to go on that. We're working with our electrician to get out there and start the work, and I'm hoping to have that unit installed in the next 4 to 6 weeks. Depot Park tree update. We requested 4 proposals for the tree work. We received 4 proposals. They were all very competitive. We are proceeding with one of the contractors to get them under contract right now, and we're going to reach out to Bocce and Petanque, firm up their schedules, and talk to other, property owners there at the depot. Make sure that we're not conflicting with any major events. Get that work scheduled for the fall like we have planned. Third, another Depot Park item we had about a month ago. I was out for our Rotary Public Works cleanup. It was very successful. We had 25 to 30 volunteers, at least 25 from Rotary. We made a huge dent in a lot of the maintenance that we had to catch up on in the park. Tree trimming, bench painting, a lot of excess leaf removal, amongst other things. We got into the volleyball court and did some exploratory digging to see if any of the lower layers of sand were salvageable. They aren't. We're coming up with I'm not going to call it a design, but we're consulting with people that know volleyball and coming up with a good plan for getting that court back in service again. We did straighten out the 2 posts to hang the net on, and that's ready to go. So it was really successful working out there with Rotary that day. Thank you to Rotary and all the other volunteers and people that contributed with that. Additionally, we have a cemetery cleanup this Saturday, September 16th from 8 to 12. That's going to be at Valley Cemetery. And there is a notification for that on the homepage of the website right down at the bottom. So if you want to pitch in and come out and help out with that, the more the merrier. Everybody's welcome. Second to last is one of the things I'll be bringing to the commission next meeting is a recommendation gets started again on trimming of the Broadway street trees. And these are the oaks that start at Napa Street and go south on Broadway on both sides of the street, about a block and a half down to Shell gas station, Century 21 Realty on the other side. Those trees haven't been trimmed in quite a while. There was an annual, my understanding, 3, 4, 5 years ago, there was an annual tree trimming operation that was occurring. It hasn't occurred for a while. They're getting overgrown. And my recommendation is going to be to start that up again. And if you haven't walked on that stretch lately, about probably 5, 6 years ago, we went in and shaved the sidewalks because the sidewalk displacements were getting bigger. And since then, we've had to go in a second round and put in some of the black material that takes away the displacement on the sidewalk displacement and levels it off, not ADA compliant, but it's a temporary fix. And then also there's, you can see that there's utility issues with the utilities in the ground too. And so one of the reasons that we could be, obviously it's good to just look at the trees and the canopy and see what do you recommend as far as trimming goes on an annual basis, semi-annual, but additionally, if we are doing any sort of limb reduction up above, it could be second to do a root reduction down below. And this would be in consultation with the arborist, given a lot of scrutiny, but we have some issues with the sidewalk in there, and we may have to be thinking about doing root reduction in the future. And so I just wanted to put that on everybody's radar, because those trees are, that's the gateway coming up to the plaza. But we do have to, you know, we just completed a successful project trimming the plaza trees, and that hadn't been done in a long time, and it worked out great. So I'm confident that we can go in and come up with a great plan for keeping those trees moving in the right direction and take a look at some of the issues that we have at the foundations. Lastly, I want to just mention that there's a general plan update process that is a joint planning commission and city council meeting on October 11th at 6 p.m. And that's Jennifer's item, and I told her that I'd push that out for her before we ended. And that's it, unless there's any comments or questions.
Is it only the eucalyptus trees at Depot Park?
No. The original scope of work was for 17 of the blue gum eucalyptus in the middle. And then based on some comment from some of the users, we added 5 other trees into that what I did was when one of the users up there requested to take another look at not just the blue gums in the middle, but the other ones that were further to the south. And so we assessed all those trees that were further to the south in there and found 5 trees with limbs that should be either removed or lightened significantly. And so those 5 trees will also be removed. That's all going to be able to fit within the scope of our original project. Yeah, even though we added scope to the work up there.
And on that topic, Mike, presumably you're going to have that contracted before our next meeting, because we talked about this item at the last meeting 3 months ago. So I just want to make sure that if you do get that contracted, can you push that information out to the commission so we know it's on your schedule? Just because I get comments all the time from Bocce and Petanque, and I want to be able to speak clearly about, you know, whenever you do have that timeline.
Yeah, most definitely. And I updated them a little while back with the current status. I sent an email out to Bocce and Petanque just so that you know, and let the
they're not going to be satisfied until they have a date. You know this.
And that's fine. And I'm sticking to my original date, which is
Fall.
the operation happening in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fair
and so I will shoot out an email though midstream to this group and let everybody know when we get our eyes on a date, because the contract is probably going to get taken care of within the next 2 to 3 weeks, And then the next thing will be coordination with Bocce and Petanque and their tournaments and make sure nobody else has anything going that weekend or that week of the operation. Yeah, after we talk to the contractor, find out how many days it's going to take, how they see the job unfolding, how close people could actually be, how much work zone we have to quarantine off and put barricades, etc. So yeah, we'll keep the commission informed.
I'm sorry, I know everyone wants to go home. I'll be very quick. My only last comment is I think these volunteer activities are awesome. And given the investment we're making in the Big Belly trash cans, I think it would be amazing if we think proactively to the start of the season next year for Farmers Market on Tuesday nights and think about a volunteer committee, whatever, it could be Rotary, could be anybody, standing next to every one of those garbage stations at the first few farmers markets to educate people on how to use them. Because if we don't use them properly, the investment is not worth it with compost, and I find that people have no idea how to use them. I think I saw it done at the Gravestein Apple Festival in Sebastopol a few weeks ago. They had volunteers for days at every single trash can, making sure you knew exactly which one to put it in. And it was so helpful, even for someone like me who thought I would knew. So just an idea to throw out there, and we've got plenty of time to maybe set that up for next season.
I think it's a great idea.
I have to really second that, because I was at a music festival this weekend and happened to be posted up real close, and there were 3 very nice bins. 20% of the people would come up and put it in any bin. They didn't care. 20% of the people would come up and put it in the correct bin, and then the rest of the people would come up and they were just completely confused of where does it go, you know? So it was kind of like multiple guess. So yeah, good point. Final question is, at the volleyball courts, there were a lot of yellow jackets that stayed really low to the ground, and they seem to be gone now. You must have done something.
Those were sand wasps, and I know that because I was up there, and I've been stung by yellow jackets, and I would not be that close to a yellow jacket. And what we did was, some of the operations that we did up there during the cleanup may have disturbed them a little bit, and they were very active flying around. They dig holes in the sand, like at the volleyball court, to make little burrows. And we researched it a little bit. Bocce and Petanque reached out to us and asked, hey, where'd all the yellow jackets come from? And I think Marin County had a little article that they put together that one of the supervisors sent to me that described this type of insect, had a picture of it, and said it's harmless and they don't bite people. And so it was great. And so I forwarded that over to Bocce and Petanque. They said thank you. And it turns out that it's a different, it looks a lot like a yellow jacket. That's what I thought it was at first. But I was working around hundreds of these things the day of the cleanup, and they just kind of would part way and let you walk through and then go back to their bee operations. So it was great that they weren't yellow jackets.
Yeah, the reason my dog inhaled one and was sneezing for 20 minutes, but it's good to know they're not harmful.
I think we are ready to adjourn. I want to thank everybody. It's been, I think, a really good meeting. We see some forward progress. It's really encouraging. And I will get ready to pound the gavel. If there's no objection, we'll adjourn.
You didn't give us much time to adjourn.
Are you running out?
No, I'm coming over to visit you. Well, because
They lost our panel, Patricia.
They lost our Something happened in China. We gave you 3 months.
Anyways, it's coming October, so we should start mid-October when Jamie is scheduled. And we want to get out in like the next week or so and start talking to you about.
We're moving, we've been working and boxing everything up upstairs. The movers are coming Friday, not this Friday, but next Friday. And, we'll be waiting for you.
You're ready.
We're ready.
I'll give you an official date.
They lost it. I can't believe it.
Like, it was like 3 steps down the line, we ordered it, we have to trace all the orders and, I don't know, wherever the heck it comes from, in China, and everything. And so we were looking for it, and obviously, what do you mean?
So it's gonna, okay, so November, December, mid-January?
Usually we out of there by early December.
Oh, so he thinks he's gonna be quicker. Okay. All right, well, I'm planning the 1st of January because it's too confusing otherwise. So I can have all my exhibits ready. Good.
We didn't forget about you, I just don't want to break the bad news until I'm back.
I know, but it's,
When you're showing up.
I know, but I've been meaning for the past month to call you. So it's good to be here. So we're actually gonna, Lori, that's been our collections manager, she's retiring, and Lynn Downey, who's a professional